Esports Podcast, Noun. A 2-hour-long video full of banter and nonsense where the guests are only introduced halfway through and the outro makes you think your internet's died. Huh.
Right, this is going to be another episode of Daring Minds. Obviously, there are already 2 boxes here. I do hope people can count. There's not a guest for this one, is there? Or you spin it the other way. This is how actually like American media would sell it. It's like I'm actually here with my recurring guest, Gio, top commentator from games like Rainbow Six, could have been Valorant. I don't actually. Here's the thing, wasn't really in Overwatch, you know. I'm stretching it a bit on that one, but, you know, might one day.
Overwatch, I never did like a tier 1 event.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay. You just aspired to. Okay. That's good.
Yeah, well, yeah, for a bit.
It's all right. That's the one that got away. It's all right. We'll make this one work. So obviously, on the past week, we had the episode with Minnie, who I will say I actually did do just one of those weird like brain fart moments, which is when I only just noticed this myself when I actually put in the description, like, you know, who the guest is and stuff. For some mad reason, I just wrote that he's the Fnatic Valorant manager.
I saw that because
even though I obviously meant coach, I obviously meant coach, and I don't even know why I would put manager because who knows even who the managers are now. But the reason that's mad is because that does make it sound like he's like a fake coach. He's just getting water or something, doesn't it? Like so. Look, that was a mea culpa. It was just a mistake, Minnie. We know you're the real coach, mate. We all know that.
Thorin knows nothing about esports.
I know that though. So right. On this episode, what we're going to do is basically, because like any moment now, this is why I'm going to get this episode out quickly, the Lock-In tournament begins, which is the first, the joke is it's actually supposed to be the first real Valorant tournament, if you know what real's going to mean in the future. Like, to me, this reminds me of Overwatch Geo, because when I first watched it, I watched it from the beginning because Monty was coming into the game. And you know, I'm coming from CSGO, so I was loving that open circuit, you know, like the Apex tournaments, and then like, you know, MLG. But the problem is, I realized everyone else was just like, now we're all just waiting for Overwatch League to start. And then when Overwatch League started, like they sort of like deleted all that history and they acted like it was the beginning. So in a way, this is the beginning of real Valorant, isn't it? You know,
it does kind of feel like this is the first legitimate year for what like the official circuit's going to be. Yes. But I think that I don't think you can go as far as to say it's going to like sort of erase what's happened so far, especially as 2022 had so many like major events and global events. Because even like if you compare it to the Overwatch thing, like 2017 Overwatch, yeah, you had Apex, but like Apex was always in Korea. So it was still, and even then, like the first like 2 years of Overwatch League, people still always talked about Apex and who was good in Apex. And then after that, I stopped watching Overwatch League. So I don't really know. I don't know what people spoke about after that. But it does feel like this is the kickoff of kind of what Valorant is, quote unquote, supposed to be.
Yes. So what we'll do is, obviously there's a bazillion teams. If people don't know, there are literally 32 teams. So we're not going to go through them all, but what we'll do is we'll pick out either some like big teams, interesting ones, or a couple of matchups that look interesting, you know, have some angles that you can maybe go for. So
actually, like hold on, because before we do that, should we address the format?
Yeah, what do you think about it? Because it's essentially just, if people don't know, it's a single elimination, and it's just, I guess it's just best of 3 the whole way, and then the final's best of 5, is it? Let me double check. Yes, it's the semis and the grand final are best of 5, but it's a single elimination tournament, and obviously, one thing that itself can be a point of contention. This would be the first thing any team, I think, should probably say is like, how did you seed a 32-team tournament? We've all got brand new teams, you know what I mean?
I actually don't know how the seeding was done. You know, they released it's a random draw.
Oh, that's it. I'm not even sure if that's good or bad then. Okay.
A random draw assigned each of the 32 teams a number from 1 to 10 that corresponded to their region and an already placed team slot, giving us our final bracket. Okay, so that's
when
how
they say the region thing. Because listen, I don't know if you know this, but in League, you do actually. You know League of Legends. You know in League of Legends at Worlds, they do actually separate the teams out. Like they don't let like 2 Chinese teams be in one group. That makes me think the way they phrased that about region, that they've done like a soft version of that. Like as he said, within the region you do 1 to 10. So maybe it was like they didn't want like because if you do it random, remember you could technically have like all the fucking Asian teams on one side of the bracket.
I think it was like it's obviously less about seeding because you can't seed teams that haven't done anything.
Yes, exactly.
But it's more about like variety, you know, because you want to like reduce the fact that it's only going to be like American teams and make it through or whatever, because this is essentially a glorified show match.
Which
makes it a little. a little strange. And I've seen a number of takes, and actually, I should have saved the tweet because I don't remember who tweeted it, but I saw a tweet like 2 days ago that was from a player that said something like, the more I think about it, the more I feel like lock-in is actually a bad idea because you're taking all the partnership teams out of a month of potential practice. Okay. And a number of them are going to like go out in the first round. So they will have flown all the way to Brazil, play one best of 3, they'll have to leave. And obviously those that go the whole way through are going to be there for nearly a month. So it's a really long tournament. You don't like win a Masters slot or anything. What you do win is an extra slot for your region to qualify in the future for Masters.
Yes.
So there's something to be gained from it, but not in the same sense that you would expect from like a Masters or Champions event or whatever, where like you are the champion of something.
Yes.
And you've also got to consider, I suppose, the fact that there are going to be a number of teams who have been working very hard to like come up with all of their like strats or whatever, and they're probably going to be reluctant to show everything at this point when they don't have a direct thing to win on the line. So it is kind of an interesting one where I think it's really good from the sense of like starting the season off with a bang, because I'll be honest, the Valorant off season has been really boring. I mean, there have been a couple good events, but I just mean the off season's been quite long and there hasn't really been anything huge going on. Obviously, we've had like roster mania and a lot of these teams actually putting their rosters together. But in terms of like, if you have that craving for watching something legitimately competitive with these teams and these players that you're already really invested in, it has been really long. So I think this will kind of like satiate a need for something that a lot of people have. But I don't know if it's something that, like, let's say going into 2024, you could directly recreate and expect the same amount of value from, to get away with the things that you take away from the teams and I suppose the scene in a sense.
I can see both sides on that one. Like, I do agree. If you are the team, especially like one that had like big facilities and you have all this plan in mind, how you want to prepare, it would suck if you go all the way to Brazil, then you go out first round. Like, obviously you'll just feel like, what a waste. Like, why do we do this? But the thing is, though, I'll say on the other side, like, there is obviously the raw angle that if you are one of the teams that goes deep, it might also, like, because it's real games, like scrims can do something. They can teach you certain things, but it's not a real game. Like, official matches will also sort of help you too. Like, I think if you go deep, it'll end up being good.
And I think that would be really good for any team. Obviously, I don't know what the likelihood is of this happening. It will almost certainly happen to a number of teams, but if you're a team that is a newly established team, maybe you have some new players, or maybe you just don't have like an established core of your roster. If you can get, a couple of rounds deep into the bracket, then that's probably going to give you like really valuable kind of experience, because you need that extra sort of like officials experience with a new roster. Whereas I think that there are going to be a number of teams who have kept the core of their roster, if they've kept the entirety of their roster, that will be in less of a need for that. And I think that's why there's, a bit of a bias towards already established teams in terms of making it relatively far in this bracket, just because of that fact. Like, it doesn't really matter how good your players are. Like, if you've just compiled a roster and they haven't played in an official together ever before, then realistically, what are you going to be able to expect? But I think because a lot of I would say the vast majority of the rosters of the 32 are not previously established, then there will be some non-established teams that do make it decently far and they gain from that. And I think those will probably be the teams that can take the most away from this.
Well, when I'm looking at the bracket, now that we know there is a sort of a random element, there are some insane, not only first round, but second round matchups. Like, the obvious one that immediately comes to mind is like Cloud9 plays Paper X right off the bat.
Yeah, that one's going to be kind of nuts.
Someone's going to be upset after that, no matter what.
100%, because like Paper X are obviously a fan favorite. And they still have the players that made them like super, like they've got the same roster. So again, this is like already established team. Paper X, everybody roots for them. They've gone really far in international events before. But Cloud9 is...
Imagine if they go out in the, remember, Super Team. Imagine if they lose their first ever match. Like,
this is Ye's team.
It's going to be wild, isn't it? Yeah.
This is the team that Ye went to, has arguably the best, or at the very least one of the most experienced IGL in the Americas League at all. You have some of like the most skilled players. Leaf was in talks of being the, potential best player in the world. I think this was kind of prior to the era of Ye a little bit. Zelsis, one of the most flexible players in all of Valorant, can pretty much do anything. Zeppa, who I've always been quite vocal about the fact that this is my favorite player, full stop.
Oh, okay.
And you're coached by MCE, who's like an amazing coach. So this is like a good team. And going against Paper X, I mean, their playstyle is insane. They're aggressive. I think they're going to test Cloud9 a lot. And I think I predicted Cloud9 for this one because we were just talking about it, but I did a video where I put my predictions out, and I'm pretty sure I predicted
because you just said like Yay or something. Yay's from Optic, so it's Cloud9. So I think it was the joke or something, wasn't it? Something like that.
Yeah, like I think Cloud9.
Yeah, it was like Yay's from Optic and Optic's dead, so like I'm picking this team or something. It was some angle like that.
No, that was the NRG one.
Ah, right,
I said NRG were Optic and Optic
there
were
you
good.
go, right, okay.
Yeah.
I did remember half the joke.
Yeah, almost. But Cloud9, I think super good, but the fact that Cloud9 lost 0-3 to 100 Thieves in the Red Bull Homeground Finals in December is that one like thing that makes me think, okay, like maybe there's like we've seen some signs of weakness there. But also Paper X, I'm gonna have to get this up because when they went really deep internationally, it wasn't in the last event. I am going to have to check real quick, though.
No, I think you're right. I think the one they went super deep.
Yeah, they came 9th to 12th at Champions, but it was Masters Copenhagen, so that was in July, where they came second.
Yes.
So, it's obviously really easy to be like, oh, well, at some point in the last year they did really well, but, what was it that caused them to kind of like fall off? Can they bring that back? And I think like one of those big things is what made Paper X really, really good back in July. And what has always made them a good team, but is the fact that, players like Forsaken and Jing were exceptionally good at doing what they did and getting those really early picks, being very aggressive from the word go. And even though other teams knew it was going to happen, it was still really difficult to deal with. And I think by the time Champions came around, you sort of had this situation where teams had kind of become a little bit more equipped with how to deal with that. So it wasn't like they had to learn what was happening because they were already very aware, but they'd become better equipped at dealing with it. And obviously you're going to be walking into Lock-In in a brand new meta. That's going to be, a whole other thing. There are all of these changes that are happening. I mean, one of the big things that's been spoken about from a meta perspective recently is the Stinger, which for those who don't know is sort of a mid-table kind of gun that you can buy. It was like 950 credits.
Okay.
And so what was happening was, let's say you lost your pistol, your whole team could still afford like just all Stingers. And the Stinger was kind of too good for its price point.
So it was like the Force Spy gun, like in Counter-Strike, you'd almost never keep your default pistol. You buy like a cheap but expensive, like a cheap but powerful pistol to try and fluke the round.
But it's not a pistol. It's not a pistol. Right. That's the thing. Right. So it's kind of like in Valorant, that equivalent would be like maybe getting a ghost or a sheriff.
Right. Yes, like the Deagle or whatever. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I was going to say those who watched whatever event it was that DDK casted will know what the sheriff is.
It was the major, actually. It was actually the first match of the fucking World Championship of CS. It was just come back.
I never saw it.
Isn't that wild?
I saw like people made the joke.
Literally, just coming back to CSGO and everyone's like, oh, I think he's been in Valorant. He goes, oh, would the sheriff want to kill it? Really? No, so this is more like in CSGO, we have a gun between the rifle and the pit. It's called semi-automatic machine, SMG, or like an MP5 or something.
Right, so that's what the Stinger would be.
Right.
So there are kind of two of those. There's the Stinger and the Spectre, and the Spectre is what you would expect to buy on like a half buy. So if you won your pistol or whatever, the Spectre is like 1,600 credits, but the Stinger is 950. So there's a big price difference there, but for the price, it's kind of been too powerful. So you'd get a lot of like force rounds, and you would have like people haven't been like made to go back to eco rounds or anything, because even if they lose their rifles, they can still all buy Stingers, like even Stingers with partial armor or whatever.
Oh, right. Okay.
And so that's been a big thing in the meta lately, and people have hated it. And Riot have just said, yeah, we're upping the price of the Stinger. Like we're changing some stuff about that. So even then, this meta that people have been playing with recently is going to change just before lock-in happens. We've got one of the maps that, the map pool's changed. So that's going to be a contributing factor. And obviously, like in terms of what agents you have available to you as well. So the things that you can kind of look back on a year, 6 months ago and be like, this team was really good then, you obviously have to consider the fact that the game will have changed a certain amount in that time. And yeah, it does make me wonder, because I think that at their best, PaperX could probably flatten Cloud9, but I could envision Cloud9 being more flexible to deal with whatever it is that is kind of the situational factors like the meta and whatever in that actual matchup.
I've got a couple of points for you. One on the thing of pricing the Stinger. That's actually the aspect about Counter-Strike even that people always forget. And I'm glad Riot gets it in Valorant, which is it's not about how powerful the gun is, because the whole game's are entirely capped and attenuated by the economy. It's also the pricing of the gun. Like in that particular scenario, maybe there's nothing wrong with the gun itself. It's just, as you say, you're almost incentivized to just gamble and never have to go to a true like force or like a safe round ever. Whereas like if you just put the price up, now at least it's a choice. Now you have to choose. Do we actually invest in this, or do we say our team maybe aren't good with them? Maybe we're the team that don't do that. Like, that's a good change for the meta. Then the other angle is there's actually a part that people who don't know CSGO won't know about Cloud9, which is when you said Zeppa is a good player there. He actually was someone in CSGO who was like a real rising talent in NA. Like, he actually did look pretty legit. His problem was he did like the Chaos team with Steel, and then he did that like, he came in at the end of the bad Henry G Cloud9 experiment, the massive team.
Oh, no.
And the problem is because he came in at the end, he basically only had something mad, like I'm going to say like a month or two, and then the project was closed. What people won't know is this team is loads of people who were on the Chaos team with Steel back in the day. Leaf, Zeppa, Vanity, and MCE as the coach were all in Chaos, which was Steel's team at the end of CSGO for like the latter year or so. So they've actually all got pre-existing history. So look, it's not the same game, but I'm pretty sure they all chose to be in the team. They must all vibe with each other. Like, as long as they're good players, this actually means that even though it's a new lineup, like there'll be some pre-existing like chemistry between players, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I mean, Zeppa, Vanity, and Leaf were on Cloud9 Valorant anyway, so they formed a core in Valorant up until this point too. Zelsis and Ye are kind of the two that have been brought in.
And by the way, this is a 100% CSGO team, if people don't know. These are all people from the same like generation of like the next ones coming up. It's just if people don't know, part of it actually that meant they came to Valorant wasn't just Valorant. It's that when we never thought there'd be a LAN again, a lot of people switched over because it was really boring to play CSGO online, believe it or not. So there you go. Well, you're welcome. You got a whole half the generation.
Speaking of Steel, though, one of the jokes that I made in my video was that Steel died so that T1 could pick up their current roster. Didn't he? Yeah. And I am actually quite excited for T1's roster. Sure. So T1, this is going to sound very strange to League of Legends fans, but up until this point have been an NA team in Valorant. And that's why Steel was there after he left 100 Thieves. But now they've become a Korean team. But they've brought in, so we've spoken on this show like a number of times about Saya Player, who was on the Guard before, which MCE coached. And how he was this insane sniper in Overwatch, and he was an absolutely incredible player. He's getting one-upped now. He's getting one-upped because he is on T1, but so is Carpe. And Carpe was basically in talks for pretty much being potentially the best Overwatch player of all time.
Yes.
Same role. Like, also a Widowmaker player, so he was a sniper. And I'm just like, both of those players are on the same fucking team. Which I think is a very exciting prospect. They've got Zeta as well. So he was previously on Cloud9, and he had a history in Counter-Strike, right?
Yes, he was actually the best at the end. He was the best Korean Counter-Strike player, yes.
Munchkin, who's also an ex-Overwatch player.
People remember him, yeah.
And then they've taken over Ban, who is an American player. I'm pretty sure he's like Korean in ethnicity, or at least like
logically he must be. You'd think he must just be like a son of someone who's Korean. Oh well, I mean, as in he's American but ethnically Korean. I'm assuming that.
Yes. So I'm pretty sure he like must speak fluent Korean, but he previously played for Knights. I think he was on LG at some point back when they had a team.
Okay.
Yeah. End of 2021 he was on LG. So that's kind of their import, I suppose. And then with Autumn being their coach, who again, Autumn went over with Zeta when the trade was kind of done, when Cloud9 actually kind of got rid of Zeta. But I think that
By the way, spoiler, shall I tell you something I heard? Obviously, I didn't get that many Valorant rumours, but I know it was presented that way, but I heard it was actually the other way, and basically those players, the Koreans, were just like, we want out of Cloud9, and then they just made their way to T1. Because, the coach and the players went as a group. I've heard that it was like they forced their way out or something.
Yeah, I think there was probably some interpersonal stuff there. I don't know what, but it happens.
I mean, it's just culture clash, I would imagine, yeah. And also, it's not even just like no diss against Cloud9. Maybe they just wanted to be with Koreans and be in the Korean league, If you don't know Koreans in that sense, they love Korea more than anything, of course. By the way, the other thing that they have as well is, so they play Furia to start off with, but then the winner gets the winner of that bloodbath of like Sentinels and Fnatic, which we talked about with Mini, because like, again, if you wanted to make like a banger first round matchup where, spoiler, someone's fans are going to be really upset and say, you never should have made this team. You've done it again. Like, whoever loses this one, it's a bad story.
I had a number of people get quite upset with me that I predicted Sentinels to win that game, which I thought was quite funny because, like, again, obviously, like, you're always going to piss someone off no matter who you pick in that matchup. And I've also always been a big Sentinels
You were against
critic.
him. Yeah, exactly.
I've never been like a huge Sentinels fan or anything. And so I find it quite funny that like people were, mad at me for that.
I also know what you mean, by the way. Like, when you pick against someone forever, it feels nice that you can actually pick them and think, hey, they could win this.
I love
it's
it.
Nice,
I think it's hilarious. Like, I don't have an allegiance. There's no skin off my back. But I think it's interesting because they have obviously kind of like been picked apart a little bit over time. So Fnatic, you could argue, have a bit more of that kind of like stable core. And we spoke about that last week with Mini. But I mean, with Sentinels, you have like Sick and Tens, they were both originally on Sentinels anyway. But bringing in Sassy and Pancada, I obviously don't know how things are in terms of like communication with those two, because I mean, their English is like fine, but they're still coming from being on a team where they are predominantly communicating in a different language, and that's still most likely got to be something that you have to kind of like get past. But I have a lot of faith in Zekken and Psycho, both of whom came over from XSET. Zekken was like their star player, and Psycho just seems to be an incredibly diligent coach. And for them, I think to kind of like wrangle, or Psycho more so than Zekken, but to kind of like wrangle the team and be able to apply some structure, which was always my biggest criticism with this fucking team, like, is the fact that they were so adverse to like getting a real coach that wasn't raucous, which is nothing necessarily against raucous, but clearly it wasn't like a hyper-structured sort of situation.
Let's be real, the vibe people had when raucous came in is, at the time, I think it was even when they had Zombs, maybe, and it was like it's Zombs' mate from Overwatch. That was what people tried to make it seem like. He's just like the player's friend or something, right? Well, I'm sure he did his job, but that was like the vibe I was in the team. A lot
of what was kind of like going around for a while was the fact that when Shazam finally sort of conceded to the fact that maybe they should get a coach and he couldn't do everything on his own, he specifically wanted an ex-player.
Right.
Like, did not want like a coach. And for me, that was always a huge red flag. And I think there are a lot of people on Reddit who kind of like had this attitude of, like, oh no, that makes sense. Like, he's a player, he wants another player. Like, yeah. And I don't really kind of like buy that, because I think the job of a coach is not to say that ex-players can't be very good coaches, because I think they can. But I think the job of a really good coach is to be someone who like isn't your friend and isn't going to coddle you with every decision you make, and isn't gonna like, I think the whole thing with like a player specifically wanting an ex-player, it made it feel like you wanted some like relatability and wanted someone who's going to justify a lot of the decisions that they do. Whereas I think that someone to kind of manhandle you to a sense, and really like teach you how to make decisions that you would not have naturally come to yourself. I think that's really what coaching's meant to be about. You're not necessarily supposed to make a list of things in stone that this person has to do, but it's more about teaching someone how to think about things. And you don't need a coach if you're just going to have someone who's going to teach you to think about things in a way you already think about. And so I always felt like that was the biggest thing for Sentinels that was holding them back. So having that now, I'm really excited about. And also Kaplan, who was previously on Ghost Gaming, I think he's also really like cut his teeth as well and proven himself. So I think the coaching staff on Sentinels right now, I'm very, very excited about. So yes, even though it isn't an established core roster quite to the same extent that Fnatic is, I think that the talent that they have is incredible. And I think that the structure that they can implement for the team is probably really, really conducive to success. And I would also like to see TenZ be freed a little bit. I mean, we saw that he's not washed at the Ludwig and Tarek Invitational, because even though Sentinels came third in that, and they didn't, there were some moments that looked a little bit like not amazing from them. Mechanically, you could still see that TenZ was, on his top game. And I think if the discipline required can be implemented into the team to help facilitate that in the best moments, then I have a ton of faith in the ceiling for this team. So yeah, maybe this invitational is a little bit early for that, but fuck it, I don't care. This team's exciting now.
One thing I would say about this is an interesting angle is what you said about the Brazilian players, the ones coming from Loud, because the issue I have there goes like this. I'm actually not aware in almost any, only the mini sports games I follow, like League of Legends and CSGO, I'm not aware of any really successful time that Brazilian players left to another region, because in CSGO, it was done a few times. Some of the
You're not a Rainbow Six fan.
Some of the major champions did it. So for example, even though they, people like Cold Zero was once the best player in the world, but a couple of years later, when he was a little bit worse, he went to a big FaZe Clan team with all superstar player, didn't work. They actually made a team once where when he left, no, this is before he left, when they were going down as the top Brazilian team, they brought in Tarek and Stewie, two of the North American players, after they won the major. That also was okay, but it didn't work. And the key thing is this: you're right, they're all going to be able to speak English as far as I can tell. In fact, in general, even though obviously Portuguese is their first language, put it this way, when they say they speak a bit of English, they're going to speak way better on average than a Chinese person or a Korean. They're going to have very simplistic English. They'll be able to speak conversationally. But I will say that was something that they did all blame when all these players either took in foreign players to the Brazilian team or went to a European team. They all did say that look, you could speak and you could communicate, but it was a mixture of they just wanted to speak Portuguese. That was just a big thing for them for some reason. And then also I get the vibe there is a cultural thing that they had going on. So I'm just interested to see if it'll work, because again, in that sense, remember, I think the good thing about Sentinels is this: Sentinels is obviously just going to be the fucking media circus the whole way through Valorant, isn't it? They're always going to have these enormous storylines. It's you succeed or you fail completely. So in that way, it'll definitely be explosive. I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Sentinels are definitely good on the marketing, branding aspect of things. But I mean, yeah, the comment about the language barriers and whatnot is an interesting one. I think it's probably less about the ability/inability to literally understand or communicate in English, and more about a lot of the nuances and idiosyncrasies that you get in language and various dialects and stuff like that. And especially when you consider gaming kind of comes with its own language in a sense. It's not, oh, I'm going to study my school textbook and speak perfect Queen's English in my Valorant game. Of course you're not. So it's sort of you learn the language and then you have to kind of learn a sub-language. And I think that probably adds an element or a barrier. And that is one thing that I also find funny is especially in League of Legends, you get Korean players that come over to NA or whatever. And the language that they seem really comfortable in talking, even if they're not fully there in interviews or whatever, is gaming specific words. Because that's all they need to know, in order to do their job. And then it's always the other stuff that comes later. And
it's always them saying Giga Chad or something ridiculous, even before they can say a whole sentence in it. I know, exactly. It's true. They learn all the slang and the terminology.
Shit like that, So, I think that, there's a difference between learning English on Duolingo or learning English in school, and then learning English for a specific profession, and being able to communicate in a specific context.
Yes. And then another one, look, on this one, because I want to talk about these teams, I am going to sort of pretend I know they'll win their matchups. I think they will, because in the second round, the new Team Liquid, if they win, would play the new Navi. Now, if you're from EU, that's also but that could be the final. You know what I mean? That looks like a banger if it happens.
That should be a fine. Like, okay, so firstly, I fully agree with you. Team Liquid and Navi, there's just no way they don't win their games. So these are the two teams that have basically been able to take, for the most part, the picked apart constituents of the ex-Gambit roster.
Yes.
Who, you know, funnily enough, like Gambit, we talk about Gambit as this like beacon of reverence. They never won a world championship, but they won a Masters, and it was in 2021, and yet we still talk about these players like they are just the best in the world. And I think that says all you need to know about who is on these teams. You know, Team Liquid kind of losing their two players who are the most spoken about. For any other team, you lose those two players in your roster and you're starting to think like, oh, okay, we're downgrading. Yes. But they
it almost did them a favor, didn't it?
Yeah, Red Dar and Nats, you know, like, which is absolutely insane. Yeah. And then on the side of Navi, what you have is what was the FPX core, and FPX last year was, in my opinion, one of the best teams as far as like story go. I mean, they were one of the best teams, but their story was incredible. But because they've lost Ardis to America, they've picked up cNed, who has always kind of been spoken about as that just absolute star duelist from
It's like what
EU.
You said on the episode with Minnie. The joke is, if you lose Ardis, again, he's supposed to be like, well, we're fucked now. It's like, well, of all the people who could walk through the door, exactly, this is the one you want, innit?
And it's cNed.
Yes.
So I just think like those two going against each other I feel like that's like a nuclear explosion, you know, like in terms of just like how big a matchup that is. It's absolutely fucking nuts. So I wouldn't even know where to begin on. I think that like Navi would maybe have an edge from the fact that they are more of an established core because they've literally just brought in one person. And that one person can essentially be a plug and play because he's taking the exact same role that the guy who vacated had. Whereas, you know, there may need to be like a little bit of reshuffling in Team Liquid from a role perspective. You know, I wonder if like I think that like Yampi may end up having to like take a little bit more of the role that Scream played, for example, which is not a bad thing, but it's still just like, you know, you're kind of, you know, having to change a couple things there. So, it could be that they need a little bit more time. But I'll be honest, when I did my predictions video, there were a lot of people who said that Team Liquid were their favorite.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I could be completely wrong there, but I do think that Navi Liquid matchup is almost a guarantee, and it's gut-wrenching that happens in the round of 16.
By the way, speaking of an example, this is an even more extreme one of where these guys, I can tell you 1000% speak English, is obviously like Nevera and Scream did go and make like that all French speaking Karmine Corp lineup. That's a pure example there. If it's nothing to do with the language, look, they obviously do prefer to speak French. That is pure culture, I can tell you that. Because if you know French Counter-Strike players especially, they are like, it's like, here's the weird thing about them. I'll try not to go too harsh here because obviously as someone English, like I've got a whole fucking bag full of shit about the French I could just go into. So we won't do that. What I'll say is this though. The problem is this. Everyone who's not from France will think things like, oh my God, that guy's like devastated. He lost the game. What the hell? Like he's overreacted. It's like, no, they are just super over the top sometimes. And what I found is that French teams are all about like the vibe you have in the team. Whenever they would do interviews, they wouldn't say like, oh, well, we lost that last game because, you know, we fucked up the pistol round. And then, you know, I had a great call on A, but the rotator got me, and you know, I guess I didn't hit a few shots. No, what they would always do is they'd go like, our energy was not there, and we are thinking maybe after the event there might be changes. And it would all be about how they just felt about the team and the vibe. And the idea was if they felt great and the confidence was up, they'd be banging. And if there was anything else though, even if in the game it looked good, there was problems. So I get the vibe they just wanted to be in a team where the same vibe was there because. I mean, it must be very different to play your whole career in those teams and then go and be with like these weird mixed teams that you have. So what I want to ask you is this though. It's obviously a big gamble though to go an all French speaking lineup in a game where you can make lineups like the Team Liquid one. So the question is, do you have much confidence for this team? Is this one you're looking to? Karmine Corp?
So I'll be honest, I know less about the other players on K Corp, so I can't necessarily give like tons of insight about them. Like as far as I'm aware, I'm just checking here, but like none of them have played at a particularly high level.
The only one I know is the
basically
XMS
tier 2
guy
players.
did play with Scream a long time ago, like 2017 in a team, but he wasn't even in CSGO after that as far as I remember. He was in a low-level team, so this just seemed like a bit of a gamble in that sense, right?
I mean, XMS like played in VCT back in 2021 on Alliance, but Alliance were never like really a super notable team. So I think that you know, I have a lot of faith in Scream and Navira as a duo, but I think that K Corp is probably going to be a developmental process.
Okay.
For the most part, I don't think they're going to be like a team that you're going to instantly see tons of results from. I know, or at least what I heard like through the grapevine was that K Corp as an org specifically obviously wanted to put a French-speaking roster together. And obviously, if you're a team that wants to put together a French-speaking roster, you're going to chase down like the two like biggest French-speaking players. So I would imagine that Scream and Navira got offered a lot of money because K Corp have money as well.
Absolutely.
You know, that's why I wasn't.
And they obviously want, and they obviously want the big, if people don't know, in League of Legends, they essentially outbid LEC teams, even though they're in the French league. And yeah, you're right. Obviously, like they're one of those teams. If you notice in League of Legends, this has happened where when the big orgs come in from Spain or they want players from those regions as well because they know that their fan base comes from there. So to them, there's actually it's even worth more to bid for those players. They're the players you want to make everyone happy. You know.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't think that they're necessarily going to be a team that we like see rival like Team Liquid or Navi. I mean, who knows? Maybe eventually they get really, really good, and that does happen. But just in terms of like what we have now, no, I think that you know they'll be fine. I don't think they'll be a bad team. I just don't think that like anyone's going to lose any sleep over them particularly.
Here's the free joke if you're from CSGO. If you need to know how irrelevant Alliance was in VALORANT, the only thing they're actually famous for is that bizarrely James Banks was the like GM of the team while still doing all those CSGO events. So it's and
also like Mitch, who's like one of the biggest casters in VALORANT, was their analyst for a long time.
Okay, well at least they found jobs they're actually good at. So. Whatever. Listen, on that one, at least I know those people. I don't know the players. I can't fucking say shit, can I? So, no, the other thing I would say as well is this. By the way, just as a random aside, one thing I am a tiny bit disappointed about from the French scene is this. You know, one of the things I'm buzzing about was like T1 and like all these big stud players I know from Overwatch. Where are all the fucking... Where's Soon and AKM? Where are you? These were the guys. Wait, these used to be really sick mechanical players in Overwatch,
Soon.
Didn't they? Yeah, well, they were mega, weren't they?
There were a lot of big French players in Overwatch. And the French fucking invented like the whole quad tank meta as well. Yep. Eagle Gaming were huge. Like, yeah, they had a massive like fan base. But yeah, I don't know. I feel
weird,
like
isn't it?
I mean, there's definitely like a French presence in VALORANT, obviously, but like not I mean, actually, you can look at... So, of all the countries being represented at VALORANT Lock-In, France are number 13 in terms of, like... Oh, no, they have 13 people. Oh, no, they're joint 13th.
Yes,
and they have 4... Right. Yeah, joint 13th, and they have 4 players. There are 4 players out of 32 teams that are from France?
Yeah.
That's very strange.
Yeah. Put it this way, really weird. Just to put that in context, because obviously there is a Thai team, there's 5 people from Thailand. You know what I mean? Like,
dude, there's 14 people from Turkey.
That is pretty nuts,
actually. I mean, Turkey's like a big VALORANT region.
That's weird because in every other game, it's like a minor region. Chile. Yeah. In every other game I'm aware of.
It is, and it's also, I remember that, I remember this from fucking Reinforced tweeted this in like 2018 or something. For some reason, I always retained it. Is that in Overwatch, the country that had the highest player population to country population ratio for like the number of people who live in the country was Finland. And in VALORANT, in Lock-In, we have 4 Finns.
Yeah, there's another one. Like there was loads of Overwatch players. There's some really good ones, yeah. Yeah. And obviously in CS, they're also mad for CS2 in theory. Yeah, it's a weird one. Then again, though, even so, if you're only going to have 4...
Dude, there's One Dane.
That's pretty nuts. If you don't know,
very weird for you.
Danes are basically the best in CSGO across the board, especially actually where you know they're the best is like when you go down the levels, there's a billion of them. The reason that one's mad though is this, because as much as it is wild that there's only 4 Finns, 3 of them are Bone Cold, Durka and Yampy. Like, that's not bad. If you're going to only have a few, that's pretty good. You know, if you're only going to have a few names there. That's
yeah. No, you've got like a
banging.
good selection of Finns, but it's very strange to see the
And I will just say this, here's the thing, just for the sake of being fair, I'll call out our home country, ye old Great Britain, United Kingdom, because here's the thing, guys, this is even a game where half the fucking rosters are speaking English. There's only 3 of you motherfuckers made it in there. We have a natural advantage. We speak the language. Like, guys, you make it, listen, we all look silly in all the games anyway, but we're looking really silly now. Although I always make the same joke as usual. If anyone does try to trash talk UK, where's all the UK players? I'm like, what are you talking about? We're on the broadcast. We're dominating. We're shitting on broadcast.
That's like the thing. Like UK, you get like a couple good players. Usually the local scene is very toxic and full of the kinds of people that you don't want to follow on Twitter and probably never touched a woman. And then in broadcast, they're everywhere. Or like even coach, because I reckon there's probably quite a number of British
Well, there must be coaches, yes, for sure.
Yeah, when I think of people like Sliggy or what, Sliggy's not a coach anymore, actually. He's
there was that guy. There's 2 ones that work for that like NA team. What isn't it like? Fucking Gorilla, and what was the other guy? Oh, Minnie was talking about last week. What was that guy called? With a Z? Didn't it begin with a Z?
With a Z.
Who am I thinking of?
I'm trying to like.
Who am I thinking of here?
There's so many fucking teams.
I mean, first of all, there's loads. Like Heretics, their coaches are all fucking people from the UK CS scene. Like Neil Zenio and Weber, they were UK people. Oh, that's it. Salah and Gorilla. Sorry, it's Salah from Vitality. They're the coaches of Vitality. Dude, there's loads.
That's
actually.
Not America.
Yeah, fair enough. Whatever. I knew it was a good team in theory.
I was like hovering over.
There you go. I knew it was a team I'd seen. Is the point? There you go.
Yeah.
Obviously, Mini himself.
Like, if you're British, just give up on trying to become a pro.
Yeah. Basically, just either talk about the game on camera or in a team speak. That's all we can do. We can just talk.
Yeah.
The joke is it's only the language we've got, I guess. Yeah, you've cracked it there, actually. That's why we're not in. It's only the language we've got. Okay.
Yeah, very true.
Or the other angle
wants
is...
to import us to America.
And also, there is one last joke I have to say, which is actually, as much as the language helps us, it's like, unfortunately, Americans speaking English is going to be a lot more understandable to foreigners. The real problem is if you get the wrong accent, like it may as well not speak in English, you know. Like if you had me, a Scottish person, artist, and then fucking someone from Cornwall, like, joke is we would not understand everything we're saying. Yeah.
Fucking Imi, who coaches G2, and he's like wild, so scouse. He's so scouse. And, you know, I don't know how his like American players understand what the fuck he's talking about.
God bless him.
I want to see a Glaswegian coach.
There you go. That would be pretty wild for sure. The joke is, for real, even we wouldn't all necessarily, if the Glaswegian person really gets going, we wouldn't understand everything.
You don't get it, no.
And also the slang is just, that's another one where it's like, I don't even know what half those words mean.
You probably get cancelled for Glaswegian slang.
Probably. Oh, put it this way, without going any further, I will just say, just for the sake of just saying this, because it's all totally legit, and to be fair, if you actually understand the way words work, it is supposed to be about what you intend behind it and all that. It is mental that in League of Legends, you might have seen this, there's the guy Ender from NA. And so as a nickname,
I know what you're going to talk about. They keep calling him Bender.
And even the LEC account was like, good luck, Bender. And I was just like,
as a Brit, that makes me uncomfortable.
No, fucking hell,
it's like, I get it. It's not a British product. Not. He's not a British person. Like, you know, you can't assume that they're all going to. But when you have only ever culturally known a word to mean something, it's like, but I suppose that's, you know, I'll be careful what I say here, but how Americans feel when Brits talk about cigarettes.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know,
I'm not joking. That's one area. Luckily, it's never happened. That I've often thought there's going to be a young player who's going to say, "I'm dying for a pack of," and then he's going to put that on Twitter. And what you won't know is he will actually, unless he's an arsehole being edgy, like he actually won't have intended to say anything wild, but it'll just sound like the most mental fucking statement you can ever say, won't it?
Yeah,
I thought the same thing when I saw that.
I definitely feel like when you kind of get freed onto the internet, you have to curb your language to match what Americans.
Oh, it is. It's mainly Americans, let's be real. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, what about this then? Another team I thought was interesting was actually the Loud team themselves, because obviously they had some changes, right? Like if they'd have come in with the original team, maybe everyone would even be saying they're the favourite. What do you think of the new Loud? Like, do you expect them to be as good? Have they lost key pieces to you?
Yeah, I think Sassy and Pancard are like huge elements of that team. But you know, again, like I think that they're still going to be a good team. You know, I don't even know how you pronounce his name. Kawanzin came from Ninjas in Pajamas and Two's Toys. Oh my god, I don't know how you like read any Portuguese words, but you know, came from like TBK was like the last team. So they've both come from like tier 1 teams. And again, like I wouldn't necessarily call myself an expert on either of these teams because I'm a little bit less well versed in like other Brazilian players. So I can't necessarily like tell you how incredible they are relative to the rest of the region. I think that, you know, especially when you look at like players like Aspas and Sadhak. I think Sadhak was underrated when he first came to the team, and he actually really like kind of like proved his worth over the last couple of events that Loud played in. So having that kind of backbone still there that's been really valuable to them is huge. But this was one of those teams that I feel like, in a sense, kind of I want to say like came out of nowhere, and it was because they were just really greater than the sum of their parts. And so, like, when you see a change in that, even if the remaining players and even indeed the new players are really amazing, you just don't know if they're going to have that same effect. Like, you know, those were the right 5 players at the right time. And you see that in all sorts of games. And I remember the same thing happening with G2 in Rainbow Six, where, like, they were these 2-time world champion team and they were just absolutely perfect together. And then eventually they get like a new person in who's an incredible player, and like they're good, but they're not like the same, you know? And that's kind of my like wondering with Loud, is if they're going to kind of experience that. They're still going to be a good team, but like, are they going to be like the Loud that we knew that they were before? I don't know, because I think they really were something extraordinarily special this past year.
Okay. What about, Nick, give me, like, for example, let me see who they play in the first round. Okay, Zeta Division
Gen.G,
plays
right?
the Leviathan team. Do you actually think Zeta Division, like, should they actually be a very good team still? They always showed flashes at the VCTs, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll be fine. I don't think they'll beat Leviathan.
Like, it looks like they kept the exact same roster, right? Pretty much, didn't they? Let me see. Did they bring one person in? Looks like they lost one person to Detonation Gaming.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe one other person.
Rita.
Okay, they got most of the same lineup though, right?
Yeah, I mean,
are those the best players that they kept?
I mean, no, yeah, like I'm happy with their roster. I think their roster is fine. Again, Zeta, like they kind of have that like boon from the fact that they are an established roster. I think that the thing with Leviathan is they kind of imported some really strong players. So import, it wasn't an international import, it was from another team. And the way I think about that is when you think of like how like alloys work, where like you have a metal and they inject a tiny bit of another metal and suddenly it's super strong. That's kind of how I see Leviathan at the moment. Like I envision that going for them. I think that like Zeta Division are a fine team. And they obviously did like shockingly well at Masters Reykjavik back in April, but I think that was something of a miracle run. Like, I don't know if that takes some credit away from them. And like, I hate to make it sound like that because I do like to give credit to teams where they've like earned something, but I don't necessarily see them as a team that I just see being like a crazy heavy hitter,
right?
Like against the general, whatever. I have a lot of faith in Leviathan, and I think generally the South American way of playing has proven itself to be very rapid and very strong. And I just have always kind of seen Zeta as being a bit more two-dimensional than that. So I envision Leviathan to win that. That doesn't necessarily mean I think Zeta are a bad team, though.
So you're interested in this Gen.G lineup? To me, obviously, this just looks like a random collection of Korean players.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen like players like King before. I'm pretty sure King was the Sentinel player for Vision Strikers. I think he was like a Killjoy player.
Edge was back in the day. Yes, at the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, you've got like a number of different Korean players in here that have kind of come from different things. I'm kind of interested from that perspective because of that fact that like they've all sort of like come from different areas. You know, like Meteor, he was on Northeption, who played at Masters Copenhagen.
Yeah, that makes sense, I think. Yeah.
So like they have like a decent amount of like experience, but again, it's kind of one of those instances where you have a roster that is sort of like a new mishmash of various players, and like where do you go from that? I think the really interesting thing for me, and this is not necessarily like super relevant to Lock-In per se, but I feel like with like the Korean scene in Valorant has always been like an interesting thing, because we've kind of spoken about it from the perspective of like there's one really incredible team and then everyone else. Yep. And there's sort of like a pool of players below that, but like really if you want to be someone, you're going to be in this team.
Yes.
But I think that now with this more structured idea of what, you know, like the regions look like and stuff like that, like I really just have a feeling that the Korean teams, the fully Korean teams, are going to be, I don't even know how you describe it, but like, you know, like as one of them improves, like the others are going to improve.
They're all going to level up.
Like, yeah. I think that there's going to be like the rising tide, like
carries all ships,
raises all ships, or whatever it is.
Yes.
Like, I think you're going to see that effect in Korea. So even though you have teams like this, like Gen.G, who are not an established team in the same way that like DRX are, I think that being in that environment and just knowing culturally the way that Korean teams oftentimes like operate and improve, and like the way that the work ethic and the scrum ethic and stuff like that is done there, I think that you will probably see a general upward trend of the level in Korea faster than maybe you do with other teams that are newly established elsewhere.
I mean, like you say, you've got T1
honestly,
and
that's
DRX,
kind of a gut feeling more than anything.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, but I just get that sense that I think that will be something we see.
No, I agree. I mean, if people don't know, one of the actual secrets to why Koreans in so many games have gotten to a high level is they're just fantastic at iterating what they think the best style is. Like, essentially, the joke is, I mean, they really do this in school as well. The Korean people in general, they're not the people who are more like, right, there's these levels. It's like everyone's going for the A star. Look, some of you aren't going to make it. You're going to fall by the wayside, but we're going to get all the people that do. So the idea is you all try to be the best. It's why actually, I always make this joke. If you ever watch LCK, the league in Korea in League of Legends, it's actually not always the most entertaining region, because the joke goes, if a top team plays like a middle table team, whereas if you're in the West, if you know you're the underdog, you take chances, you do crazy shit, you try like high variance, but they'll just the middle team will just play correctly. And the joke is, it's like just politeness, like after you, sir, no, after you, okay. And then it's like you just like lose like really narrowly, but he does the right move, you do the correct response, but he's better, so then he does the next move, correct response again, and it's like, it's predictable. But the key thing is, if you are good enough in this system, if you're copying the best teams and T1 and DRX end up being good, as you say, teams 3, 4, 5 level up, and then suddenly you'd have a really vibrant scene, right?
Isn't like the whole thing with Gen.G in League of Legends that like what they do really, really well, and the only teams that are above them are the teams that like have found a way to sort of like specifically target like the things Gen.G do, if that makes sense. Like the Gen.G, the really good just like League of Legends style that Gen.G play. I don't like really watch the LCK,
no, it's like
but I occasionally watch like co-streams and stuff, and so I sort of pick things up.
Yes. In that sense, that Koreans, like I say, are very stylized. Once they have their style, they play to their style, and they just, I mean, no, they are. It's like they say in Italy, they just try their best. Like, they try their best at the style. If it works, great. If they lose, the joke is, no matter how, even if they played well, they apologise. They do, don't they? They always go, I'm sorry, I'll play good games. Like, you're like, bro, you were really good. Like, what the hell? It's just it's the way they are. Right? One team that we haven't talked about, we should definitely end on this one. Because spoiler, this is just a secret way. Notice how we talked about Sentinels, Fnatic, like FPX players. We're secretly just doing all the same topics from last year. We're regurgitating them. So obviously we have to talk about Optic, not Optic, aka NRG, right?
NRG.
It's got to be NRG to end with, because this is the thing. You forget when you look at all these banger rosters, that's a pretty good roster too. Look at the fucking names on this one.
It is. It's a super banger roster. And you know what? It's kind of funny because I feel like they get talked about less, or people are less excited about them.
Yes.
And you know, I know that Yinsu just posted an interview that she did with FNS, and I haven't seen it, but I did see the sort of like title that it was, or like the thing that she tweeted, like the quote from it to encourage people to click it. And it was something about him saying that, like, you know, they will consider it a failure if they haven't, like, you know, gotten a certain you know,
he's hyping it. That's
amount.
good.
So he's I think there's a lot of pressure on this team because this is essentially ex-Optic, but I think there's a lot of determination from within, just from like reading that one tweet, for them to kind of like, I guess, like, not necessarily be ex-Optic, like not be like in Optic shadow, but actually like achieve a lot in their own right, which I think is the right attitude to have and makes a lot of sense. I mean, I'm pretty excited for this roster because
you know, you can just make the same joke.
Fucking stoked to see artists.
You can make the same joke. It's the same joke as the one with the fucking FPX roster, isn't it? It's like, if you were losing, you fucked. There's nothing you do. But if you get an artist, hey, you know what? Well, let's wait and see. This could be good. This could be good, right?
That's also like something that I'm really, really sort of interested in with this regard is the fact that, like, so Optic had Ye at a time where Ye was sort of the archetype of the player that should be playing that meta. You know, like, that meta was built for Ye.
He's the best example of the chamber player, right?
Yes. And, like, that meta is obviously not the meta anymore, but it just means that sort of the way that FNS, Crashies, and Victor have been used to functioning and playing around, because Optic was played around Ye.
Right.
This is now actually with somebody completely else who is a phenomenally mechanically gifted, like in an almost obnoxious sense, duelist. But he's more like, I'm a jet, I'm gonna like dash in and do all this crazy shit. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, you know, and so I think that the way that the star player, quote unquote, is going to operate is still going to be really quite different to what they were used to with Ye. Now, obviously, up until this point, they will have had a certain amount of time like practicing with him and getting used to that. So I want to see kind of how that has evolved, but I suspect that that is going to be a process that is not complete by the 13th of February, which is, of course, when this tournament starts. So that, I think, is going to be like a really big, because there's so much potential there, putting artists with these players, and particularly like with FNS is what I'm mostly excited about that. And
by the way, is KO still in the meta?
I mean, KO is like one of those, he's sort of like one of those agents that I think like you see teams pick, maybe like map dependent, or if they're,
because the people don't know, like, Artists even plays that.
Like,
Artists will play a KO.
Yeah, like, and I think that's something that is also quite important at the moment, is like a number of the ways that the roles were sort of distributed will kind of change. And I think, was this something we spoke about with Mini, where it's kind of like, we were saying how in NA, like, the player that would play Raze is not the same player that would play Jet and stuff like that. And so I think that there is going to be some of that, because actually watching NA challenges this past week, I have seen a few more examples of players playing both Jet and Raze. So that kind of feels like they're sort of going back to sort of like role distribution that hasn't been the case for a little while. And so like our duelists are playing duelists and whatnot. And so yeah, like, you know, this is one of those teams that I think you're going to like see flexibility from. I think Crashies will probably stick mostly to his role. I mean, he was mostly a solo player before. And FNS isn't really going to change that. Victor has always been a really flexible player. And he has been that sort of classic flex player who's kind of got, you know, similar to what Zeppa is, where you kind of like go between initiator and a duelist, or a secondary duelist. And so like he and Ardis will probably kind of like do-si-do around each other quite a lot in terms of how they're going to be distributing that role. And Yeah, I have a lot of like faith in the potential for this team. I think like what it really comes down to is like, is that change in structure like gonna be a problem or gonna be enough? It's kind of like what I said with Loud, like they were the right 5 players at the right time. With Optic, they were the right 5 players to be able to like succeed in the meta that they had. And this is a very different era of Valorant now. So do they sort of look worse? You're like different? Like how much does that change? I mean, Marved isn't even a part of this. Marved didn't even get asked to be in a partnership team.
Yeah.
So there are changes that I think that yeah, like, because I know, like, I've also said, like, you know, when we talked about Cloud9, it's like, yeah, Ye is on this roster and Ye is really good. So that's awesome. And it makes it sound like I just kind of give that to Ye and say he will be irrevocably amazing no matter what. And then, like, for the rest of them, it's like, well, here is a condition. You don't have Ye. But I think it's more that, like, Ye is that player who kind of had a more independent role within the team, whereas the players and the roles that they're representing on NRG right now were the players that were building that structure predominantly around Ye and what he needed to be able to achieve. So when you're kind of providing that structure still for the new team and the new guy, like, what he needs might be different. And so that's kind of where like those, so I think it's a little bit easier for Ye and what he does and what he always did well to just kind of like go wherever than it is for like the more supporting cast to sort of do that even if they're staying together.
Right, I'm pretty sure at the end of the one with Mini, I asked at the end of this year who would be the best team. It was like a guess for that. But I don't think I asked for the lock-in. Now, look, obviously it's in so many weeks. The fact it's like 2+ weeks or something. We'll do other episodes between then if we can and do like each, phase of the tournament. But let me just ask you now, just so we start off and see where you start at now. If you have to plump for one team now, who will we go with? Where you put your flag?
Oh my God, I could probably give you like a few teams.
Sure. What's the biggest one though? What's the gut feeling say?
Like there are like 3 teams. I feel like it'd be one of these 3 teams. Can I start with that?
Yeah, all right then. All right.
Navi, Liquid, or 100 Thieves?
100 Thieves, woo! Here's the thing. I thought you were just going to gamble on all the rosters, like like T1, like fucking like 100 Thieves is a strong one. Okay. To win the whole thing, all right.
I actually I think that I probably feel more strongly about 100 Thieves than I've seen other people express. Let me just like.
They just don't have the biggest names, is all. Like obviously they have good
EDG.
players. They just don't have the biggest names, do they? So
I mean, but like 100 Thieves roster at the moment is insane.
Right.
100 Thieves roster at the moment is insane. They did exceptionally well at Red Bull Homeground in December, and I think they impressed me a bit more than I thought. Like, I actually thought Cloud9 was going to beat them there, and just seeing how well-oiled 100 Thieves looked at the time really, really impressed me. I think that having Asuna and Cryo kind of working alongside each other is, like, both of those players absolutely insane, and in the past, I probably would have maybe been concerned about a role clash, but I think, like, the way they've been able to balance that out is, like, super good. I've always actually really enjoyed Bang since he's been on that roster. Back when he was like just basically their KO, machine. And I don't know, they really impressed me at that event. Like, I think had I not seen that event or whatever, maybe I wouldn't like place them so high. But they did really impress me at that event. So maybe a little bit of like recency bias from that, although, in this case, recency bias probably isn't a bad thing, but like, yeah, I think they did really well.
I work hard to make sure I get mine, but no one can do it all on their own. And that's why everyone needs a support group. And so I have my Patreon community. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you want to ask a question in one of these monthly AMAs. Do you want teasers? Find out who the upcoming guests are. Or maybe you want to take part in one of those long discussions where you can help set the table of the topics and join in with other like-minded people. Well, if so, put your money where your mouth is and join the Skrilluminati today via the Patreon link below, as the following people who I very much appreciate did: Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Ahmed Hadjou, Kyle, Bot Pounder 420, Tooorin, Animosity, Tobias Bernasconi, Jensen Goh, Tosh, and always, you know it, a special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion.